At the start of your business journey or on it, it can be a really, really lonely path. One where you are everything in your business. You know, you're putting the trash out, you're making the coffee, you're the CEO, you are the marketing manager, you're the sales manager. The list is endless and it goes on, and it can be really, really overwhelming. You are searching for all the answers, which can be really tiresome. Equally, you can come across a solution, help or guidance that you didn't realize you needed until you do. This is why I created the Conversations playlist, where I get to interview my go-to experts and the people that are in my tribe, my arena, and have really connected with me, and I wanted to bring it to you. So these are bite-sized trainings, if you like. They are to create light bulb moments. My name is Lindsay Burden, and I'm a business coach to ambitious women in business. I don't want to talk about me today. I am super excited because I get to interview today and introduce to you Carolyn Whitehouse. The Heart-Centered Prosperity is the business name. Haven't quite said that right for you today. Carolyn Whitehouse, business name is Heart-Centered Prosperity, which I do think we need to touch on. But before we do, I always ask everyone that I'm interviewing to send me a little piece of introduction. So Carolyn works with people who are people pleasers, good girls and overgivers, helping them to gain clarity, clients, and confidence with money so that they can have what they want and prove everyone wrong. I love that bit, by the way. Carolyn is an experienced coach, psychologist, and advanced emotional freedom techniques practitioner, tapping, and we are going to come to that, I promise. You live in Andover with your husband and 2 adult children, plus your beautiful Belgium Sheppard dog. Sounds very exciting and sounds like there's a large animal in the house.
Yes.
You're spending time walking in nature, visiting historical homes, and learning more about how amazing we are as humans. Just so much in there that got me excited when I was reading it. Now, I always ask everyone to give me a topic for our interview, and yours, I've already said to you, got me so super excited. Procrastination is your superpower. So, Carolyn, can we start there, please? Well, I don't know if we should start there or talk about your business name first. So let's go back to that.
Okay.
Centered prosperity. What does that mean to you, and what do people need to know about that?
To me, it's about, because when I started my journey into what I do now, if I was looking at the people who I see in the wealth arena,
a
lot of it was around greed. I feel a lot of it was around greed, pushy selling, and it was all about them, not about me as the customer. Yeah. And I still see that a lot now with, buy this product, buy this, you can get to 10K months, like doing this, this, and this. And to me, that was completely against who I am as an individual. Yeah. And so I wanted to create a business that was very much based on my values of heart-centeredness, of bringing my compassion, my empathy, and my sort of vision for the planet,
I love that,
if that's the word, around money, because I don't feel that money has to be the sort of negative images that we all think of when we think of prosperity. And so that's why I called it Heart-Centered Prosperity.
You've raised something really interesting for me there, is that we talk, and I do it in my own business, I want women to have truly successful businesses. I want us to define what that success is on our terms. And I wonder if we're stuck in a world where actually the programs, the services, the way that things are being offered and presented to us, and this information overload that is available, but that's a whole different podcast or video or conversation. You're right, they do use those phrases, which does feel and feed that negative connection to money, which is often a block for people.
Absolutely. So for me as a business owner, when I started out, it made it really difficult. I found it really difficult in business, and I found I was procrastinating a lot because the way that I was being taught to run my business didn't match my values.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do it the way that everybody else was telling me to do it, rather than, what was true for me and what was good for me. And actually, that's why I call procrastination your superpower, because it's when I started to look at, instead of, criticizing myself and having all those negative thoughts about, oh, why can't I do this? When I actually started to move towards the procrastination and ask it what it was trying to tell me, what I got back was, I'm trying to do things the way that other people want me to do them, rather than the way that feels good for me. So that's why I called it procrastination is your superpower, because I really do believe that any time that we're procrastinating on anything, there's a message there for us. It's telling us something about who we are and what we want, and how we can, run our businesses in a way that is more aligned with who we are as people, rather than the way that the world tells us we should be.
Yeah, and of course, social media feeds that vision of what success should be and what money is or isn't. And I really resonate with what you are saying there. And I love that you're talking about procrastination. It's a sign, isn't it? And we need to learn to be better to listening to our bodies and to how we feel and that emotional connection to things, because you're absolutely right. The signs are always there, but we don't always take the time to acknowledge them, to explore them, and to take steps that are, as you in that word you've used, aligned with who we really are. And I'm wondering, before we get to your fabulous questions, I'm wondering if that is something that as women we are starting to feel more of, that we want to be heart-centered, we want to be aligned, that it's a powerful place for us as women business owners to be.
Absolutely, because the way that women see power, and obviously power goes with money, is it's a relationship, it's a collaboration between us and our clients, between us and our communities, between us and the planet. And so that really needs to come through in the way that we run our businesses, in the way that we show up in the world, the way that we do our social media. It needs to be heart-centered. It needs to come from who we are, because then it is authentic. It is real. Yeah. We hear so much about, you must be authentic and you must be real. Well, what does that mean? Yeah, but it's really about you being who you are. And I really believe that each of us has the answers that we need for our businesses, for our lives. We have all the knowledge already inside of us.
Yeah.
We just need some help to be able to tap into that. And I think procrastination is one of those avenues, if you like, for us to really start to understand who we are, what makes us tick, and how we can grow and expand in the way that is right for us.
I love the words that you're using in expanding and expansion, are words that I use all the time. And I love that you keep talking about the world, and it's so much more, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there is so much power to actually stepping into owning the wisdom within inside, and allowing yourself to hear it and act upon it. And we always say, the answers are always within. They are, but then how do we tap into them? Which leads me nicely on, I think, to your 3 questions. So
yes.
you've shared with me in the notes that you sent over and kindly completed for me in preparation for this interview. And you were telling me earlier that these are questions that you use with your clients.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So shall we start with those questions?
Well, before we do that, I want to just talk a little bit about procrastination itself, because we often have, when I talk to people, they often have a specific view of procrastination.
Okay.
And actually, procrastination can show up in many different forms depending on you, basically, on your personality. So, you know, I've heard people say, well, I just go flat. Yeah, so they sort of, rather than doing the task that they're supposed to do, they go and make a cup of coffee and then sit down and watch, you know, so their energy just sort of flops. Yeah. There can be people who get overwhelmed, and so they just sort of go up into their head and they get a headache, they get a migraine, they're, you know, they can't think straight, they're very confused. And you can have people who actually get really busy, and that kind of seems a sort of oxymoron to procrastination, but they will say things like, oh, I'm so busy, you know, I just can't get everything done in a day. And that itself can also be procrastination, because they're not doing what's important, they're doing what keeps them busy. It's just another way of distracting or delaying or avoiding doing something that we actually say that we want to do. Because that's the other thing. It's about, we say that we want these things. Yeah, it's not, you know, you're not procrastinating, or you might be procrastinating over, let's say, I don't know, doing the gardening or doing the washing up, or, you know, but these are generally, they're tasks and they're not things that we really want. So we don't tend to put them into our conversation. But when we start talking about, you know, I haven't got time to make those sales, or I haven't got the energy to make that call, then these are things that we really want. You know, we're talking about things that we really want, but for some reason we are avoiding, delaying, postponing actually doing whatever it is. So would you agree?
Yeah, I was going to say, I can really relate to that busy thing, because over the 10 years of being in business, when I get really, really busy, I know I'm avoiding something, and I need to look at what that something is, because it's usually the one thing I need to do to move the business forward. So I really resonate again with that whole, for me, it's the busy thing. I'll get really super busy. I'll even go and I'll just go onto another social media platform, because I've got you know, I haven't got enough of that to do. So yeah, that busy. And I also see that in my own clients sometimes, when they just feel really, really flat. And I've seen that. And I also see in my clients sometimes when they just get that feeling of really overwhelmed, and they feel like they've got too much to do. So then they don't even know where to start. So yeah, I really hear what you're saying there.
Yeah. So it's about just starting to recognize how we, you know, you personally show up with procrastination. Like what is it for you? And it might not necessarily be the same as anybody else. Yeah. But it's being really, this is the sort of honesty bit. It's being really honest with yourself. What am I doing here? And that's like, I can hear an ouch in the background, because it's about being really honest and saying, you know, what am I doing here? How am I getting in my own way here?
Yeah, that and again, it's listening to ourselves, isn't it? And I think I alluded to that. When I know I'm busy and I look at the thing, the one thing I'm avoiding is the one thing that will take me towards the thing that I want. So then that for me as well is another, okay, so I really do want this. And I'm hoping that your question, certainly when I look back in those periods when I was just busy and never achieved any goals and never seemed to move forward and seemed to be in that perpetual motion, I'm wondering if your questions would have really helped me back then. So would now be a good time to give us one of because they're in an order, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, absolutely.
I was going to say, do we have to do them in this order? Is there a...
They can, certainly the first two can appear in either order.
Okay.
But generally, the place to start is, what are you scared of?
Yeah.
Because what I do with clients, and I'm sure you do as well, is, you know, we identify what is it? What's the thing that you're really avoiding here and you don't want to do? And then what I get clients to do, and I encourage of the people to do it is to actually get themselves to write the steps down, because we generally know what the steps are, right? It's not the steps that are the problem, right? So write the steps down and actually put them in a calendar, or in a, if it's a video that you've got to do, then sort of make the dates. And then what I like to do is I take my coach and I imagine that she's standing over the top of me going, right, okay, now we need to do it. Now that could be, it doesn't have to be your coach. It could be, just another person. It could be a really good friend, but somebody that that will hold you to account. Right?
Yeah.
And then what I get them to do is to say, okay, I'm standing right next to you and we're going to get this done now. What is going on in your body? Because the thing is, the thing with procrastination is the longer the time frame between now and when you actually have to do it, the less you will feel it. So the first thing to do is to bring it right into your frame of reference, like right here. Okay, we're going to do it like in the next hour, right? Because what that does is it amplifies all of the feelings, because your brain suddenly goes, holy moly. I was going to say something else there, but
you could have done, it's fine.
but that's what you want. You want to really intensify those feelings so that you can get a really good idea, a really good handle on what is it that's going on. Now, again, this is where different people react in different ways. So some people can get really angry, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because the anger relates to the rebellious side of things. So they can say things like, you can't make me do that, right? So we'll cover that in a minute. But what most people do is they go into the self-doubt, the fear, the anxiety. Now, again, it's really good to distinguish between what is fear, doubt, and anxiety, because we tend to use the feelings and we identify the feelings all as one, as the same, but actually they're not. So anxiety and doubt are very much about a threat coming towards you without you knowing what the source is. Whereas fear is very much about, I've done this before, and maybe it didn't go well, or I didn't get the results I wanted, or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's good to just clarify those differences. And if you can identify, for me, when I think about doubt is always in my head. It's always up here in my thoughts, whereas fear is always down in my stomach. So you may get a physical difference as well. But, we get things like, so what if I do it and it goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I'm not ready yet? What if I'm not good enough? There's all these what ifs. Yeah. And all of this is just bringing into focus how scared you are of this particular thing that you want to do. Yeah. And that's good, because it's really showing you what's at stake here. So the purpose of the fear is to help you to plan, to help you to get better, to help you to make those nuances. If it did happen before and things didn't go well, okay, what can I do differently? How can I improve this? But there's a lot of, obviously, that I'm not good enough comes out a lot. And sometimes it's, well, nothing happened last time. So what if nothing happened again? So behind the fear is always disappointment. Okay. Right? It's this fear of being disappointed, of wanting something so badly that, it might not happen.
But what if it does?
But what if it does? And there's a good point there, because what I find with people is they will often go straight to the, well, what if it does? So they're going straight from the fear and overriding it with the positive. Now, what can happen is that they then miss out on this rebellious section.
Okay. And
Okay.
before we get to that, because I was going to say there's
Yep.
this thing, isn't there, at the moment about this real, the toxic positivity.
Positivity, yeah.
That's kind of what you're alluding to there, is it?
Yeah. Because feelings have to be felt. They're there for a reason, and they need to be, allowed to be there. So when a client says, I've got this really tight gripping feeling in my stomach, then that's when I bring in the tapping, because the tapping just allows the body to accept that, yeah, this is what's happening. When we try and be positive too early, we're not accepting the reality of how you feel at the moment. You're invalidating your own feelings. Yeah.
And that's such an important point, isn't it? Because I know from personal experience that I'm really good at just pushing everything down and just going, it's all going to be fine, and pushing it all down. And at some point, I mean, personally, it eventually explodes.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's important to stop and acknowledge those feelings and to explore them a little bit, and to understand where they're coming from before jumping to that positive piece.
Yeah. So because the other thing that can happen is when we get past those fearful feelings, we tap into sadness. And for some people, there can be a lot of sadness around the fear, perhaps because of a previous event that happened and they didn't tap into those feelings then and express them. So now they're being triggered again by those same feelings. But it can also link back to childhood events, to things that happened within the family, to much bigger topics than just this, video that you want to make.
Yeah.
So it can become a much bigger issue. And so bringing in the positivity too quickly also means that you lose that ability to make the connection between what's really going on here. Yeah. And because all of those, emotion, part of the reason we have emotion is a connection. It's a way of telling our brain that things are linked together. So the same emotion will trigger another event and trigger another event. And so we can almost sort of start to join the dots between what's going on now and what happened at a previous time. And again, that allows us to heal what went on back then so that it's not impacting what we're doing now.
It sounds to me like you're saying if we don't do this work in the moment, what we're doing is compounding everything that has gone on before, which I'm going to take a wild guess means we're triggered more easily, more quickly, and perhaps even it becomes harder to move forward.
Absolutely, because it becomes more overwhelming. The more emotion that we've got that hasn't been able to express itself, the more overwhelming it becomes. And that is also one of the reasons why people often don't want to do emotional work, because they feel as though if they take the lid off the can, they're never going to be able to get it back on again, because of the intensity of the emotion and the amount of emotion that's there. So that, again, is where tapping comes in really useful, because it allows you to take the lid off and have a peek and then put the lid back on again. So it's really important to do that first question first and see where it leads. Because if it does lead into sadness, then it's leading you in a direction that you wouldn't possibly have made that connection. And if you don't do anything with that connection, there's a good chance that this feeling is going to get triggered again and again and again. Yeah.
So that first question is, what am I scared of?
What am I scared of? Absolutely. Yeah. And then you see, if we do go into sadness, one of the things that it's telling us then is, actually, I'm being really hard on myself. And again, as women, I think we are, you could debate whether we're taught to be hard on ourselves or whether it's just part of who we are, but we are hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when we touch that sadness, it's telling us, like, just take the pressure off a bit. Like, there's more here than we initially thought. And actually, we need to really apply some self-care and some compassion, and, you know, not be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, I agree.
Because this is actually, it's not just about making a video. This is a much bigger issue here. And this might be the time when you actually do reach out to an EFT practitioner. You know, if something large comes up, then this would be the time to not go into it, but to say, oh, okay, all right, I'm hearing you. I need to get some support with this.
You raised quite an interesting point there, perhaps without realizing that, you know, limiting beliefs and old stories. Some of these can come from trauma. Some of these come from experiences in childhood or in adulthood. And it feels to me that there are times when you can connect the dots and go, okay, I can see where this is coming from. I can see where this is happening, and still be able to move forward. But there will be times when you'll start to connect the dots and really need some help and support to do that deeper healing work.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do. And again, it's the way that women are. Like, we work better in collaboration and in cooperation. And yet it's one of the things that I find women also struggle with, is that being able to reach out and ask for help. And so, yeah, when we hit a big thing like that, we know in our bodies, we know instinctively whether this is something that we can cope with or whether we need support. And sometimes that support may be just a friend, you know, talking to them, but sometimes it might be something a bit bigger that we do need professional help with.
Awesome. So does that bring us to question 2?
Almost. What I just want to mention, of course, what's happened is the further into the procrastination that we get, the more we're starting to realize how our motivation has been impacted. Yeah. So what can happen at this stage is that for some people, they will do not just the positivity, but they'll do I'll just put my big girl pants on and I'll push through it. Yeah. Yeah.
Pushing it through doesn't tend to work very well, does it?
It doesn't tend to work very well at all. But this is also something that people just have to be mindful of, that if there's a voice in the head that's going, just get on with it. Again, it's having the stillness and giving yourself the patience to just sit with the emotions. And I find when people want to, you know, they want to go into action, yes, they can, but it will be very short-lived. And you'll find yourself back at the first point really quickly.
And I always say as well, depending on what you're trying to do, when we push through something, when we make ourselves do something, the energy is completely off. So you will not get the results.
No.
So you're only going to prove yourself right with those negative thoughts and those stories that you were telling yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's move into question 2, because this is where I think it gets so interesting, because this is where we need to start looking out for a rebellious pattern. Now, this can come up in lots of different ways. It can be things like, I really don't want to do this. You can't make me do this. And again, that's part of the reason of using someone else to make you accountable, is it brings up that energy of, I refuse to do it. I don't want to do it. You can't make me. you know, I always say to my clients, like, it's that 2-year-old child that's sitting on the carpet, stamping their arms, you know, their fists and their legs, going, no, you can't make me do it. Yeah. And that is really, that's a point where a lot of women are quite nervous about voicing it. Okay. They often are surprised that it's come up. And yet when they acknowledge it, and I often ask them questions about, you know, how was anger dealt with when you were growing up? Was it okay for you to be angry as a girl? Or did mom and dad just want you to be a good girl or a nice girl? And anger wasn't allowed. And often with women, there's a real disconnect between our anger and our sort of motivation. And yet anger is such an energizing emotion that when it's channeled in the right way, when it's acknowledged, boy, is it a driving force. Yeah. So recognizing this part of us that is saying, I don't want to do this, you know, you can't force me, is such a gift. One, because it puts us in touch for some women that for the first time they've actually gone, oh, I don't want to do this. There's a part of me that's really angry. And that's often the first time they've got in touch with their anger. Wow. But also it's you see that anger is a block, particularly if they've had, let's say, parents who are not comfortable with anger and it's been suppressed for long periods of time. Again, if you think in terms of the chakras, often anger is associated with the throat chakra. Yeah. And of course, if you're trying to do a video, then, yeah, it's obvious why you're having trouble, because there's all this anger in here, trapped in here, that you haven't been able to voice. So sometimes we'll go off and do some anger work. Other times it will just be, you know, acknowledging, yeah, there's a part of me that doesn't want to do this. And then I give my clients complete permission to not do it.
I was just going to ask that, because I think there is times when, you know, you for me, I think when I just go, I just don't want to do this, I always check in. Is this something I need to be doing? Because I think sometimes for me personally, I don't know about anyone listening or watching, you know, we do things because we're supposed to be doing them. We're doing them because we've been told on TikTok or Instagram that we've got to be doing them. So we put ourselves in that position of doing something that we feel really, really uncomfortable with, not going to enjoy. So I'm just wondering where that fine line is between recognizing that actually this isn't something that we need to be doing, or using what you've learned to be able to perhaps not do it then, but come back to it, or to find a way to do the thing that you're avoiding. Yeah. And this is where it comes to, we're all individuals. It's about you then tapping into your inner wisdom and knowing, now, is this because I'm just angry? Like I just need to do some work on anger and allow myself to use my voice more? Or is it that the step is too big, or I'm trying to do it in a way that isn't authentic for me? Yeah. Because our anger is all about our authenticity. You know, anger is around your boundaries, what's right for you. And so listening to that anger and really tuning into it gives you a lot of knowledge about, is this to do with other people, or is this, you know, am I seeing this in a particular way that maybe if I change the way I'm thinking about it, I might feel better about it? Or is it that, you know, I really don't want to do this?
So this is when we need to start tapping into our sort of inner wisdom about what is it? What's the nuances of this? And again, this is where tapping can help, because tapping allows you to ask questions of yourself that for some reason taps into the subconscious, so that all of a sudden people go, no, actually, it's not that, it's this. And I'm continually surprised about that.
We've mentioned tapping a few times, and I'm sort of conscious that while we're using that term and EFT and tapping, and because we know what it is, for anyone that has never heard of EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping, we've interchanged ourselves during this course, just talking about that. What is tapping for anyone who doesn't know?
In a very short sentence, it is a series of techniques that reduces your stress response. So it targets the part of your brain that activates your fight and flight response, fight, flight, and freeze response. And that is at the core of what procrastination is, because the reason you're avoiding or denying or doing something to distract yourself is because on some level your body's perceived a threat, and so it's triggered your fight, flight, and freeze response. So the tapping directly reduces that reactivity and allows you to come back into your optimal zone of learning.
That's what I was going to say. It sort of slows everything down so that you reconnect.
Yeah, very much so, because it isn't just one technique. There's a variety of techniques, and some of them help with the trauma that we were talking about earlier. Some of them are more what I would call NLP type strategies, so more reframing, looking at things in a different perspective, and some of them are exceptional in the way that they tap into, pardon the pun, the way that they tap into your inner wisdom and your if you like, your higher self. So the part of you that knows, has a much bigger vision of you than you have of yourself.
I'm sorry I interrupted you then, but I suddenly thought, we've mentioned this word quite a few times now.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure. But
Yeah.
You were talking about this rebelling, which is fascinating. I'm loving this rebelling. I can see a lot of rebelling in my children, but I'm not sure that's quite the same. Well, actually, saying that, it is the same, because you were talking about anger and being able to express anger and how we were able to express it as a child. And I almost went into that place where I was off thinking about, how do I allow my children to express that anger? So that's something I'm definitely going to go away and have a think about, because you've raised something really important for me in how we allow our children to express anger. So so what are you scared of? But we're still on with, where are you rebelling, aren't we?
Is rebelliousness, is the word rebellion bringing anything up for you?
It wasn't. When you were saying, I don't want to do this, I interestingly was immediately back in my maths classroom going, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And that's exactly what I hear from my daughter. And my son's not great at maths either, which is not a mathematical house. Which, I'm kind of okay with. But I remember being in that space and feeling not able to hear, to listen, to learn, and for me, it always felt like I was just shutting down, and then probably acted the clown, because that way I didn't have to worry about not being good at maths. So that was really coming up for me, and always comes up for me. But that rebellion, it was really interesting, because I was thinking, actually, I'm not really very rebellious, and I was almost quite disappointed. I want to be more rebellious. But that first question, what are you scared of? I know now when now something's happening for me, I'm definitely going to be asking that question, and very deliberately asking that question, as opposed to some of maybe the other ways I might have addressed it in the past. But, deliberately asking my question or asking myself that question because I want to be asking that next one, see what comes up. But yeah, I was straight back in the maths classroom.
Yeah, and that is so common. It really is in women. The minute I start to talk about anger, I can't tell you the number of people who've been back in that maths class. I can't tell you. And I think because maths for a lot of people is not an easy subject, it straight away triggers that fight, flight, freeze. And then, of course, the fight, flight, freeze makes it completely impossible to do maths.
Yeah.
Because you can't think, and there's no oxygen to your brain. So it's a double whammy, really. And so, yeah, that is at the bottom of a lot of women's issues around money and wealth. I can't tell you the amount of people who've said to me, I hate maths, I hate numbers, I hate, any, or a memory of a maths teacher that pulled them to the front of the classroom and embarrassed them, or, humiliated them over their homework. And it is a really hidden problem. It's a problem for a lot of women. That understanding that they don't have to do maths. Money is not about algebra and signs and all of that sort of stuff. If you can add, subtract, divide, and multiply, you can do most anything to do with your money. And most people could do that. But the minute we start talking about maths, they go off into the all the difficult stuff that we did at GCSE and we've never used since the day we left school.
No. And it's really interesting that you say that. So you took me straight back to the maths classroom. Yeah, I absolutely love the numbers of my business. I absolutely love working with the numbers and using them to drive decision making.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of my own journey with my money mindset, which I started to do, interestingly, because I was hearing back my words from my daughter. I was like, you can have your own money blocks. I'm not giving you mine. I need to work on mine fast. Which is why I'm fascinated by money, and was particularly drawn to talk to you, because I think we share some shared values around money and wanting women to actually own it and be okay owning it, and to have as much as you could possibly desire.
Absolutely.
But I'm loving this rebelling.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say, maybe rebelling isn't the word that the listeners would use. That's a word that I use, but it may feel like something else. It could feel like I'm pissed off. It could feel like I'm really resentful about this. It could feel like I just can't even think straight because I just want to blow. Whatever it is for them, that's the thing to recognize. It's that you feel the energy of anger. It's a very strong and motivating energy, and it really, you might even have people who say, well, I just feel like I want to, and they'll do this. They're like, I just feel like I want to punch somebody, or I want to hit something, or, okay, that's the rebelliousness. That's the anger that's coming out. So it's not just about the word. It's also the physical sensation that they might have.
Because you use the word resentment then, and the word that came to me was guilt.
Yeah, can be guilt. Guilt we get into, and that's for another topic.
Is that a whole different interview?
That's a whole different interview, yeah, because what a lot of women confuse is the difference between guilt and shame. And actually they interpret the physical sensations as guilt, but actually what it is shame.
Yeah.
And, you know, most women have been shamed over multiple things in their life. And there's a lot of shame there, particularly around money and maths classes. Yeah.
So we need to speak again.
We do, because shame is a whole different kettle of fish.
So back to
the
today's
questions.
interview.
Back to the questions. Okay, so we have found out what we're scared about. We've identified if it's connected to anything else.
Yeah.
Right? We've found out if we're rebelling against something, and we've gone into the key with rebellion is to go towards it, not away from it. All right. So with any emotion, if we draw away from it, we're not really going to get the message of it. No. We need to go towards it and listen to it. So we've found the rebelliousness. We've given ourselves permission to not do it, to just walk away. But then what happens is when I give that permission to a client, you'll see initially oh, okay, right, I don't have to do it. And then within a few seconds, you can hear the cogs whirring and but I want to do this. Yeah. And this is where that anger and the rebellion starts to change, because it starts to kick into motivation. Yeah. And we get that motivating, driving energy that's kind of like a recharge. It's like a reboot. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
This is what I want. Yeah. This is what I want. And then it's about, okay, so once you notice that motivating energy, it's all about, okay, what do I want to feel here? How do I want to see this thing happening? So if it's a video, it's about visualizing yourself after the event, after it's all gone brilliantly well, after, you know, you've absolutely smashed that goal, and standing on the other side of it. Yeah. And in those feelings of, woo, you know, I did it. Like, I'm a rock star. Yeah. I'm amazing. Yeah. And really allowing those feelings, because sometimes for my clients, those feelings can be really difficult. Again, it's that we're almost as uncomfortable with positive feelings as we are with negative, more so sometimes. Yeah. And so it's allowing ourselves to really feel how powerful we are. Yeah. And celebrating that.
Yeah.
And then putting in the celebration into, okay, we've got the steps of what we're going to do, but how are we going to celebrate this? How do we really store it in our nervous system that we can do this? Because that's what it's all about. It's about changing your nervous system to accept and be comfortable with a larger amount of positive energy.
It's so interesting, isn't it, that we find the actual achieving, the celebrating, as scary. And I always think about when it's like when someone says, "Oh, that's a nice jumper," and you go, "Oh, this old thing." You can't even own it and go, "Oh, thank you."
Yes.
And women particularly really struggle with that. Yeah. And I know with my clients, when I do group coaching calls, I want to know what we're celebrating. Yeah. And sometimes I've had previous calls with them, so I know what they need to bring to the table, and they go, I don't think I've done anything this week. I'm like, what about this one? Oh yes, I'd forgotten all about that. So we're not even good at celebrating it. We're not good at accepting that positive energy around it. And then equally, we move past it so quickly. And I think what you're talking about there is almost, it's changing our minds, isn't it? To make that our norm. But if we don't stop in that moment to go, hey, I did this, and to really celebrate it and to really feel it and to have that emotional connection, we're not changing anything.
No. We really have to process it on a physical, bodily level. and then the mindset will change as well. But if we're just changing the mindset and the body is still looking out for danger and looking at what's, what threats are out there, it's not going to change anything. We have to actually physically, I say to my clients, like, breathe it in. It has to be, imagine that all of that motivation, that power, that joy that's coming towards you, and bring it, breathe it in. And really feel your rib cage expanding and holding it in your rib cage, and then letting it out. Because it's almost like we have to start to counteract the way that our breathing is developed with our fight and flight. So of course, our breathing's gone really shallow. And most people don't even realize how shallow their breathing is. You say to people, take a big deep breath. Have I lost you for a minute?
You did. You were still there, and I could still hear you.
Okay.
The bit that you were saying, you were just about to talk about breath. So I don't know if you want to go back to that breath bit, because there might be a little bit that I could probably just cut out and then come into the breath bit.
Yeah. So I was just talking about, most of us don't realize how shallow our breathing is on a day-to-day basis. We don't realize how our bodies have been conditioned to surviving on very little air and oxygen. And so that is the sort of the breath of the fight, flight, freeze. So to celebrate, we actually have to really make a positive effort to take in those big breaths, to hold that bigger feeling of power and joy and excitement and celebration, so that it takes the body a little while to kind of catch up and go, oh, okay. Yeah, but once we get it, it just becomes a natural response.
The 3 questions, it feels like it is reprogramming so that what we're talking about becomes more normal, or becomes our normal, our new normal for now, because they say new level, new devil. So we're always evolving. We're always doing this work. And I have to be honest with you, Carolyn, the reason I love mindset work is because it's never done. Because I'm one of these people, I've got to start, I've got to finish, ticked it off, and I've done it. But that's not doing the work, which is why it's a great joy to me that it's never done. So I can keep doing the work, and therefore I get far more enjoyment from doing the work, and it's more powerful work.
Yeah. And I think what came up for me when you were saying that was, it's like, this is like your inner compass. Procrastination is like your inner compass, because every time you go through these questions and you figure out another little piece of, okay, this is what I want. No, this is what I want. And you're constantly like doing this. Yeah. But you're always moving in a forwards direction. You're always, expanding and growing and learning and becoming a better you. So that's why I called it your superpower, because it is, if you can follow this process, it really does help you to make those distinctions and to move forward in the way that is completely unique for you.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's not about somebody else's blueprint or formula. It's your inner compass. It's your way. It's you evolving and growing and becoming the authentic you that was always there.
Yep.
Always there. You just needed to find a way to bring it to the world, really.
Yeah.
To go back to
bring
that,
it to fruition.
So the 3 questions are: what are you scared of?
Yeah.
What are you rebelling? And what do you really want? And you've given us that fantastic reminder that the procrastination is really that, you know, internal compass that is always helping us to understand what it is that we truly want and desire. And this is very personal. It's not what you will see or read on any of your social media platforms, or what the latest guru is saying. This is you, which is
it's not easy work.
No.
Not easy work.
I think that's worth mentioning, actually.
Yeah, and that's often why we need coaches and therapists and people to hold our hands and provide a safe space for us to make these inquiries, because it's not easy work.
I love that you use the word there, inquiries. I love that, because I use the term be consciously aware. And conscious, I use the word conscious all the time, because I want people to be questioning and learning and really getting excited, and being curious is another word I use as well. And it is that, isn't it? We're on a journey, and it can be a wonderful journey. And there are so many tools and fabulous people out there to help you along that journey. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And actually, this is way more than a conversation. So anyone has watched this, you have absolutely had a masterclass with Carolyn today. This has been way more. So you've been extremely generous with your time and generous with what you have shared today. So is there anything else? So we've got those 3 powerful questions, and you've been really detailed about the things to watch out for, what to feel for. Is there sort of a next step, or something that people should be aware of? Or are those 3 questions alone powerful enough to be using?
That's a good question.
Or maybe the next step is to get in touch.
Yes. I find those questions incredibly powerful. If you see, because when I was in this situation, when I was procrastinating and going round and round in circles, the thing for me was I kept blaming myself. I kept seeing this as a fundamental flaw in who I am and what I could do. And I felt like a failure.
Wow.
And now I know that a lot of that had to do with my background and where I've come from, but that's a whole different story.
It's another video right there.
That's another video there. But it helped to take the pressure off, and it helped me to be more compassionate to myself.
Yeah.
And for me, that's one of my highest values. I want us as human beings to be more loving and compassionate with ourselves, because when we can do that, we can give it to other people.
Yeah.
And that makes the world a better place.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. If anyone would like to get in touch, where are the best places for them to find you, Carolyn?
Yep. So I have a Facebook group called Money Magnets. I have a LinkedIn profile that you can find me on. And I have a website, www.carolynwhitehouse.com.
And I will make sure links to all of those are in the description below.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for joining me today. And as I say, this has been way more than a conversation with a go-to expert. You have absolutely delivered a masterclass. So thank you so much for your generosity today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you too.
Thank you.
Thanks.